a minute to see if it comes on. I have had some questions that have been sent to me by messenger and email. So maybe if those of you might not be able to make it live, which is fine. I know it's a funny part of the day, and I'm really happy to answer the questions that have been sent to me previously. I'm really happy for people just to watch the replay on my Facebook page. Hi, Juliet, briefly. Hope it's going well with your daughter. And hi, lovely Louise. Hope you're feeling better. Thank you for your questions. Yeah, I think I'm just going to crack on because my daughter will be home soon. She came in on my younger daughter, who's 17, came in just as I finished the last call, which was really synchronistic. That I was talking about girls. So, yeah, let's start. Thank you, Julia. I'm really glad that I'm holding this space as well. And I'm just going to say, because online lives aren't my comfort zone, but when I get off the live, I think, I wish I'd said that. I wish I'd said this. So just for those of you who are new to the Map of Womanhood School, I'm Eartha Love, and I founded the Map of Womanhood School 10 years ago. And I've worked with women, girls, and all the 9 rites of passage that we go through from birth to death for 10 years. I've got a shamanic school training women and men actually in shamanism. The Sunheart Temple School, and building a temple in Portugal. And one thing, I think I put the links here, is that I've got a YouTube channel called Voices of the Elders. And all right, love. Thanks, Juliet. Yeah, I'll catch up with you later. Just to say that on here, because I made a YouTube channel called Voice of the Elders for the elders that I have chosen to speak on there. There's not many on there, but I'm just going slowly to speak to what I'm talking about on here. So the elders that I've met in person, some of them have been my teachers. Pat McGabe is on there, Rock Sapper is on there, Eliana Harvey, and other women, Carolyn Carey, so that we have some elders to speak to towards what I'm speaking to. So that's a really good, beautiful interviews to watch. So anyway, getting to the questions. So I just want to speak first to Juliet's question. Something that she's just said was just super beautiful, which was she used the phrase, how do we go pray back in time and weave and mend? So I just think that's so, yeah, just such a beautiful way to say it, because you know, that's what we're doing when we go back and we catch up on the rites of passage ceremonies that we never had. So addressing, Louise, one of your questions is like, you know, whatever it is, whether we're looking back from the place of the elder at our mothering years, or if we're looking back at the place of the mother to our maiden years, what I've realized from 10 years of doing this work is that we have to go back and catch up on the rites of passage thresholds that we went through unconsciously and make them conscious. And that is indeed praying back in time, because prayer is one of the most powerful things we can do if we understand what prayer actually is. So I explained last time about what ceremony actually is, and how it heals the brain from trauma, and how it helps our brain to expand into the next level of consciousness, whether it's motherhood, whether it's elderhood. Ceremony does that. And it heals the trauma from the previous life that we had, whether it's motherhood or whether it's maiden. Prayer is only prayer, truly. Hi, Daniela. So good. You're at Girl Bloom. A ceremony at Girl Bloom is helpful. Okay, I'll talk to that in a bit. So in a way, I'm going to talk to all of your questions by what I say, because when it comes to prayer, what prayer actually is when it's worked with properly, consciously, is that we can pray, right? We can pray from our hearts for this or for that, but a lot of the time we're just in our minds, including myself, you know. And what prayer actually is when it works fully is the embodiment of what it is that you're praying for. So the feeling of what it is that you're praying for. So when she said pray back in time and weave and mend, whether it's maiden to mother, whether it's mother to elder, or Daniela. Now, I love you too, Daniela. When you talk to Girls Menage 9 or earlier and Girl Bloom, that act of praying back in time and weaving and mending inside of ourselves so we can be fully there in ceremony for others, for our daughters, for the girls, whatever, it's like we have to go back and we have to feel our mothering years. We have to feel our maiden. We have to feel our girl bloom. Because when we go back in time and we pray, we can change the subconscious. So that does what you asked, Louise, which is clearing ancestral patterns and grieving the mother. Also what Juliet, what you asked, which was going back and healing the mistakes that we made, is going back to those times where we crossed those thresholds unconsciously and embodying that, you know, bringing our inner girl home into our hearts and feeling the prayer that we have for our mother self, for our maiden self fully, so that we can change the subconscious of ourselves when we were that age, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm talking in from a shamanic perspective, which isn't always necessarily, words don't always touch it, but if you can imagine how powerful our heart is as an electromagnetic field, and calling yourself home, like I talked about in the last one, the mother's voice calling ourselves home. So when we don't have the mother's voice to call ourselves home, we're calling ourselves home to the Holy Mother that sits in our hearts, right? The divine feminine that sits within us. So that embodied prayer is, we're giving it to ourselves. We're giving it to our mother self, our maiden self. We're giving it to our girl bloom self. And it's only from that place that we can then move forward and give it to others, because it's an embodied prayer of who we truly are. So before I go any further, I'm going to tell a story that's going to address all of your questions, including Jane's question as well, which is about like how we can heal. I mean, in a way, you're all asking for the same thing, but it's like, how can we be there for our own daughters if we never had a mother that could be there for us? How can we be there for girls if we didn't have that for us? It's all the same question in a way, and this story addresses it. And for those of you who've heard the story before, because I do tell it a lot, it's like you can just hear it over and over again because there's so much rich wisdom in it. And it's a myth, a story that comes from Borneo, I think. And, you know, I heard it first as the half boy story. So to address Louise's questions about the men and the boys, this one's a good one, this story. So it's a story of the half boy, actually, but it's also the story of the half girl. So you can relate it as a story of the half child and the journey of the soul, whether it's a woman or a man. It's the journey of adolescence and of the teenage years. And just listen to it really carefully. It's very short. And then I'm going to go into the meaning of that story from all of the questions that you've asked. So a lot of my work is called Mending the Soul of the Village. This work of the Map of Womanhood School, I call Mending the... Sorry, that was an interruption then. I call mending the soul of the village. And I call it mending the soul of the village because what I realized is that we cannot come back into community. We cannot come back into holding circles, being the mothers of the village, in the way that we want to, until we mend the soul of the village. So when I'm going to tell you the story, all of these stories that I tell come from the indigenous wisdom of what it feels like when you are integrated into a village, when you are part of an integrated culture, that you have that sense of belonging, which is where we need to get back to be able to do meaningful rites of passage for our future generations. So yeah, all of the stories, they start with once upon a time. Maybe it was a long time ago, maybe it wasn't so long ago, but there was a village. And in this village, there was a child that was born. And this child was a girl child, we're going to say for this live. This child was a girl child, but not only was she a girl child, she was a half child, a half girl. She only had half a head, half a torso, one arm and one leg. And so when this half child was born, her mother and her father saw that she only had half a head, half a torso, one leg and one arm. So they knew that what they needed to do was have help to take care of this girl child. And the village also saw that they needed help to take care of this half child. So that all of the village helped the parents take care of the half girl by washing her, dressing her, carrying her, and tending to all the things that she needed. And the half girl grew and she grew and she grew and she grew stronger and she grew bigger. So she needed more tending, more care, more carrying further, more food, more of care, more dressing, more washing. And she got bigger and bigger. And as this need for being carried further and being fed more got stronger, she began to cry out. She began to complain. She began to whinge. And the village tried their best and the parents tried their best, but eventually her complaining and her crying out got louder and louder until the village closed their ears to her and stopped listening. And it was then that the half girl realized that there was nothing left for her to do but to leave the village. So she dragged her half body out of the village, out into the landscape of the holy hills that sits beyond the village. She dragged her half body, and it was such a struggle. And as she left the village dragging her half body, nobody even realized she was going. Nobody took any notice of the fact that she was leaving this village. And it was such a struggle for her. And she struggled on and she struggled on until she got to a place where she couldn't go any further. She got to a river and she lay down on the banks of this river, and she was so exhausted from the struggle of dragging her half body that she lay down and it was as if she was dead. And for the longest time, or maybe it was no time at all, she lay on this riverbank until she opened her eyes and she saw something coming towards her in the distance. And this something got closer and closer, and she realized that it was another half girl dragging her half body towards the river. And as this other half girl dragged her half body towards the river, the half girl stood up and they met each other on the riverbank and they stared at each other and they looked at each other with astonishment because they realized that they were the mirror image of each other. whereas the half girl had the right leg and the right arm, the other half girl had the left leg and the left arm. And they looked at each other for a while, and then they began to do the most extraordinary thing. They began to fight with each other. And not just a sort of, a little bit of a fight, a proper fight, like a wrestle. And they wrestled so hard and so strongly that they forgot that there was a river there, and they fell into the water. And the water began to bubble and foam and froth, and the two half girls sank beneath the surface of the water, and the water became perfectly still. And in no time at all, or maybe it was the longest time, this water started to bubble and foam and froth again. And out of the water this time, spat onto the riverbank, was the whole girl. And she looked down at her body, and she realized that she was the two half girls fused together as one whole. And she looked down and she thought to herself, well, what do I do now? I know, I'll go back to the village. So she tried to stand up and she fell down. And she tried to stand up again and she fell down again until she did manage to stand on her own 2 feet. And she stood up and she began to walk back to the village. And this time she had to drag her whole body back to the village. And the whole body was more of a struggle than the half body. And it was even more exhausting and more of a struggle to drag this whole body all the way back to the village. But drag her whole body, she did, all the way back to the edge of the village. And when she got to the edge of the village, waiting for her there was one of the elders. And he said, there you are. Oh my God, there you are. Welcome back. We've been waiting for you the whole time you've been away. The village has been dancing and singing and calling you home. Come on, dance with me back to the village. So the whole girl danced with the elder all the way back to the village. And when she got there, she saw indeed that the whole time they'd been dancing and that they'd made a beautiful feast for her to welcome her home. Oh, just take a moment to really feel that story. That story is the story of the 3 major thresholds that we crossed from girl to woman, and what girls, daughters cross from girl to woman. And this story is how we prepare for motherhood, for your questions, and for how we heal maiden to mother, how we go back as elder and we heal our mothering, and how we prepare Daniela for the menarche ceremonies or for girl bloom ceremonies even. There's these thresholds. And so when we look at this story, all of the answers really are in that story. And that story is showing us this journey that we go on where everything changes, like I talked about before. So everything changes at the beginning where she begins to need to have more, right? So her body's changing and she needs more. She needs more than the village can give because her hormones are changing her body. And the village realizes that it's not them that she's going to need, that she's going to need to have an initiation to be able to find the other half of herself. So who is the half girl? The half girl is the girl that is what she's been told by her mothers, by her fathers, by her community, by her school, whatever, by the childhood that she's had so far. that's what the half girl holds within her as her sense of self so far, right? But to find wholeness, you have to leave. You have to go on the spiritual quest to the holy hills to find the other half of yourself. Who is the other half of yourself? The other half of yourself on the level of the map of womanhood is your wholeness as a woman. On the level of, a spiritual journey, it's your soul. It's who you are when you incarnated, right? And so the key pieces to this story is the understanding of what rites passage is, which is separation, an ordeal, or a ceremony, or an initiation, and then an integration. So those are, like, it's a threshold, and a threshold is a liminal place, right? In between, liminal, in between, like a lintel, like across a doorway. It's like a doorway, yeah, a liminal place. And to cross through that doorway, to move through that threshold, you have to be able to take on the journey to womanhood. That half girl has to do that journey, and nobody can do it for her. She has to go on that journey to the holy hills because she realizes there's nowhere else to go. And that's the tension of the pre-adolescent, pre-teenage girl, is the tension that's there of like, right, I'm just going to go, right? Because she thinks nobody's listening, nobody cares. I mean, how many times do your daughters tell you, if you've got older girls, or whether you said this to your mother, it's like, you're not listening. One of my daughters was saying, you have no idea who I am. You don't know me. I was like, well, of course I don't know you. You have to find your wholeness, that can't which wound her up as well, because it's almost like they don't want to hear it. So I'm going to start to address some of the questions from the place of this story, okay? So this half girl, Daniela, is the girl bloom. It's the girl bloom threshold. It's the age 8.5 to 12, 13, where she's beginning to realize that she wants more, and she realizes that she cannot get it from what she's got around her, which is her village, her parents, right? And then there's all of that difficulty that arises in that. So Juliet, answering your questions about the mistakes that you made, from the place of elder, looking back at when you were mothering and the mistakes that you made, it's like, it's not just your mistakes, it's the journey of the soul and the lack of understanding that we have around the journey of the soul, right? So those mistakes were us not being able to recognize the clues that our half girl daughters were giving us as they try to separate and leave the village. Like, we didn't know what to do because we're still stuck in our half girls. So Louise, when you talk about going back and recovering maiden so you can be in mother, you have to grieve for the fact that your half girl didn't recognize the fact that your daughters were in their half girl, because we can't do more on the outer than we do on the inner. So when we're designing ceremonies, Louise and Daniela, we have to keep that in mind, that the girl that you're with, that you're giving a rites of passage ceremony to, is in the half girl stage. And what she's trying to do is to understand why she is feeling these feelings. Yeah. Which is, nobody's listening, nobody cares. She wants more, but she's not getting it because everybody's falling from grace around her so that she can get ready to go. So she can take her half body and struggle out the village. She has to have that self realization inside of her that everybody's fallen from grace. So we have to realize that then there's where the trauma starts happening between the mother and the daughter, is that we're not seeing that, and they're seeing us fall from grace, right? Because they have to go. So it's not like we've made mistakes all the time. It's just that it's not us that can give our daughters that. So if you want to go and pray back and heal those wounds from the place of the elder or the place of the mother, those years, those maiden years, whether it's your mothering or whether it's your own maiden years, you have to understand that you're taking back in time the prayer from who you are now. You are taking your mother self, your wise woman, you as you are now, back to that place and seeing it with those new eyes. You're seeing your daughter through the half girl and yourself through the half girl, and you're going, okay, what didn't I see? What am I bringing conscious? The unconscious. Yeah. What do I need to bring conscious awareness to make conscious, right? That's what a rites passage is, bringing consciousness to the unconscious. So that can be a past ceremony, Louise, Julia, and Jane. This is answering your questions as well. That can be a past ceremony where you take yourself and you make a ceremony for what you didn't see in your daughters or what you didn't see in yourself. That's why you have grief from your maiden years, or that's why you have guilt, and to bring it to wholeness, right? So we're going to journey on of how you bring that to wholeness. Hi, Willow. How you bring that to wholeness, right? So when you're working with girls now in the present, you have to see that they're the half girl. You have to see that by knowing what the half girl means inside of yourself. So that's why if you go into my online bundles, you will see the session plans that I designed from that place of what would that half girl need to be able to take that struggle of her half body out into the holy hills? Yeah. What would the village need to give her, apart from their blessing for the road? So I prepare girls. I went back and caught up on my own inner girl myself, so that I could understand. So I give them a ceremony where they have to go through some kind of ordeal, right? And it's not as bad as it sounds. It's like they have to that journey out from the holy hills has to be given in some way, right? So blindfold walks, a ceremony at the beginning of the blindfold walk and a ceremony at the end, right? A blessing for the ordeal and an ending of integration, yeah, where they're sent off and then they're received at the end, right? So I've done various things. One girl, she got in a canoe that was full of flowers, and she had to blindfold canoe to the women on the other side of the lake who were singing her home, right? I mean, she wasn't that young. She asked me for that ceremony. She was 17, I think, at the time, but she wanted to reclaim her girl self where her dad had left. She wanted to reclaim because she understood the map of womanhood, this girl, at this point, right? So she knew that somewhere on that journey of the half girl to the river that she'd lost herself. So we did a ceremony where she filled the canoe with flowers and sent her off. She did a ceremony of forgiveness with her mother, one side, across the fire. They forgave each other. They spoke to each other across the fire, and they said the things that they'd never been able to say from the half girl. They did forgiveness, and then her mother pushed the boat away from the shore, and the girl had tied around her waist a cord that her mother was holding the other end in her hand, and she pushed the canoe. I ran around the lake to the other mothers because I was part of that ceremony. The other mothers were now singing and drumming on the other side of the lake. And the mother was holding the umbilical cord to her daughter. And what happened was I said to her daughter, when you've paddled for a little bit, she had a blindfold on, remember? When you've paddled for a little bit and you feel ready, untie the umbilical cord and let it go, right? And her mother's still on the shore holding the other end. Her daughter's paddling out blindfolded. The other women are singing and drumming on the other side. And she's paddling where she can hear the voices. I mean, it wasn't a massive lake, don't get me wrong, it wasn't huge. It was enough for us to see each other, yeah? But it's symbolic of that journey of the half girl to the holy hills, right? So in the meantime, she's having her own experience. The mother's having her own experience of realizing her daughter's let go. Her daughter's chosen to let go of the umbilical cord, right? So Jane, this addresses your question around how do we help those women that we can see that aren't letting go at first flight. The women, including myself, who aren't prepared to let go of their daughters, and addressing the wounds, Louise, inside of ourselves, our maiden years, Juliet, inside of ourselves, where we didn't have a mother that could let us go, right? Who didn't let us go on that journey of the half girl. They were like, no, helicopter parenting, Jane. That's what you asked. Not too frightened to let us go. And I know you can probably all feel that inside of yourself. Because I had it inside of myself, even though I had this awareness, right? I brought my daughters up with 2 girls circles and the complete awareness of the map of womanhood, but I still had those parts of myself because I'd never had it. We're conceptualizing. We haven't had an indigenous culture that gives us these ceremonies, so we have to forgive ourselves that. So this is why catch up is so important. Catch up ceremonies, right, for our own inner girl, right? So even if you do a ceremony on your inner, for those of you who understand shamanic work, yeah, 52, exactly. So for those of us who do shamanic work or any type of spiritual work, you can do this inside of yourself. See your inner girl going on that canoe, right? See yourself catching her on the other side from the place that you are now, an empowered woman. Do it on the inner. This is what my online courses, the soul mending that I not invented, but developed, the heart temple and the soul mending, this is what it is, right? I've given it in my online course step by step, but for those of you to understand where it's come from, I needed to find a way for women to be able to do this. So I came up with my own program, right? But when you look at this half girl story, how do you make it to the holy, how do you make it to the edge of the river? This is just the beginning bit of getting to that river where she collapses, right? This beginning bit, right? So when I was doing this ceremony for this girl who'd asked me for it because she understood, she'd already had a girl bloom ceremony, Daniela. This girl had already had a ceremony at 10 with a group of women that I'd mentored. I was there. So when she got to 17, she could ask me for another ceremony. So we filled the canoe with flowers and we did it because she understood, because she'd already had the girl bloom ceremony, which was the blindfold walk that we did as a group together. So and what she did was so profound, was when she let go of the umbilical cord, she was ready. She was ready to go. Yeah, not like flailing around blindly like we did, trying to get to the shore of adulthood, which is the wholeness. What she did was she gracefully let go of her mother from empowerment, and she let go, and her mother witnessed it and saw the rope drop and was standing on the shore. Then the mother was having holding on that shore from the younger girls, which is why it's so powerful of regenerating culture. So the younger sisters that joined us were being with the mother. And so the girl in the canoe got to the other side because the women were drumming and singing. She made it. She got up in the rush in the reeds, and we pulled her out of the boat. We wrapped a blanket around her, and we put her in the center of all of us, and we told her what she needed to hear. We witnessed her, we honored her, and then she got back. She swam back to her mother. And her mother, so she swam back to her mother as a woman, right? And they witnessed and honored each other and stood there looking at each other from a reimagined relationship as new versions of them, of each other, right? And so when we look at the half girl story inside of us, what we're looking at is, where is that place on that journey to the edge of the river that we didn't get what we needed, right? Which was not to have helicopter parenting, and to have holding. So this is where Juliet, your other question around, which is super beautiful, about like how to reclaim this, to weave and mend it, you know, ideally with other women, because it's very difficult to do this journey, whether it's a catch up on your own or an existing present ceremony, to actually call the women to come and help you go back and witness your half girl or your maiden or your mother self, so that she can see what she didn't have. So we can see that this girl has then, the half girl has then, you know, dragged her half body out till she gets to the edge of the river, right? So the edge of the river is the threshold, right? This is where we move out of separation into the ordeal, the middle bit of the rites of passage, yeah? Which in this story is where she meets the other half of herself, right? So when the teenage girl goes, opens her eyes, she's been in this struggle of herself. She opens her eyes and she sees the other half of herself coming towards her. This is around, the end of Girl Bloom, where the first blood is about to come, and she needs to push away from the shore and get on that river and get to the other side. So what happens is that she needs to meet herself new, right? And to be able to do that, she needs to fight with herself, right? She needs to fight with herself. So all of that fighting that the teenage girl, the early teenage girl, does with herself, the anxiety, not feeling good enough, the shame, all of that comes from the building of the sense of self before. And how that was held when she was leaving determines that journey of facing yourself. But it's still there, even if there isn't trauma. There's still the need to face yourself anew. And so she does that. And then she begins to fight with herself. And the key bit to this is that they fall into the river. And so the river is the subconscious. The river is the psyche. It's the teenage dark night of the soul. And in the story, she falls in and the water bubbles and froths and foam. And then she disappears beneath the waves and it's still, right? So that is the intensity, the first blood, the intensity that then catapults the teenager under the water, which is into their subconscious, into their psyche. So from on a soul level, the soul is having a deep dive into trying to find your wholeness in the depths of your psyche. And why is your wholeness, the other half of yourself, in the depth of your psyche? Because it's a spiritual journey. And in the depths of your psyche is who you truly are, is the person that is your true essence, right? And you haven't been able to be the person that you truly are so far. You've only been half your story, who you were with what you've been told. So to find that wholeness or that holiness of who you truly are, there's that deep dive there, right? Which is under the water. So under the water means that you have to understand what being under the water involves. Yeah. So under the water, the teenage girl is having this fighting with herself and emotions and anxiety and all of those things that are happening as she tries to discover who she truly is, who she's becoming, right? First flight, right? So I'm going to talk to some of the questions that Jane, you had. It's like the worst thing that we can do for our daughters, the worst thing that could have happened to us as a maiden, right, is to have our mother on the banks of the river in anxiety while we're in the depths of the river in our subconscious, in our psyche, right? So this is why, you know, we have to realize that that's not our role, that we have to trust that once the girl has, or our daughter has got to that place of being under the water, that I mean, it's a hard one, because we have to trust that we've given her everything that she needs from our place of the mother, right? We have to let our mother self go. So when Louise, we're talking to like how you heal the mother, how you heal the maiden, and grieve the maiden so you can be really integrated as a mother. You have to look at that, you know, you have to look at that journey, because we cannot be the mother that we want if there's parts of us still stuck under there, the river of our own teenage years. And if we had a mother that never let us go on that journey, the most detrimental thing to a girl is to not have gone on that journey. And even though it's terrifying for us as mothers that we have to let them die, we have to let them fall into that river and trust that they're going to be all right. We have to trust our parenting, you know, and we have to accept that we might not have done the job that we wanted to do because we were being triggered by our own wounding, and we have to realize that in the depths of the river is how she's going to be able to self-initiate. So when a girl is expressing strong ways of self-initiating, like drugs or alcohol, or extreme situations, unhealthy relationships with boys, whatever it is, it's usually because she hasn't been able to go on that deep dive herself, you know. So it's like we're trying to self-initiate, and I certainly did that as a teenager. I went down that road of self-initiating into the deepest, darkest, wild night of the soul that I could possibly have had, because I was too scared to do it any other way. So it's almost like the teenage girls is getting pushed even more under the water by helicopter parenting, if you understand what I'm saying, because we have to be able to trust ourselves to do that. So when she's fighting with herself on the riverbank and then she falls into the water, that's normal. That's what she needs to do. She has to fight. We have to fight with ourselves to be able to get to the core of who we truly are, so we can grieve. So what Louise and Juliet, when you talk about, you know, the ceremonies that need help us to grieve and to undo those mistakes, that we have to recognize that the grief was there when we were a girl, and the reason why we were probably going off the rails and everything was because we didn't have that space to feel the grief that would be coming up in the dark night of the soul, to feel the death, to feel the dying of ourselves, and to feel the trauma that we were trying to let go of, because our parents um, were too frightened to let us do that deep dive. So Willow, I'm just seeing your message there. So I have the opposite that needs healing as a mum, is that I did let her go. So this is the really powerful recap and remind me that I did let her go. I always felt I pushed her out into the world and that I shouldn't have. So I'm going to answer that now, but I'm just going to let my dog out of the bedroom because he's crying. My dog is such a baby. He's crying because he can hear me talking and he's not in here. So yeah, I'm going to address that now. So what we need to understand, right, is if we felt we did the opposite or we didn't. So we didn't let our daughter go, or we pushed her away, or our mother pushed us away, or she didn't let us go. It's that understanding that um, we were doing the best that we could for a start, for the tools that we had, but it's like sometimes we have to kick the fledgling out of the nest to be able to allow that initiation to happen. And that yeah, I mean, I have met women before that have felt they've pushed their daughters out into the world and they shouldn't have. But what you have to realize is that this journey of becoming a woman or becoming an adult is very clumsy. And first flight is also, it's almost in a way, it's supposed to be clumsy, because it's like, how are you going to, now you formed your adult wings, fly? And it's like, there's a lot going on in there. So, I can see in myself as well that my journey to womanhood was like, sorry, my dog's distracting me. My journey to womanhood was like, in my own journey, I almost did that as well, was pushing my daughters to go because I wasn't able to go in the way that I wanted to. And I was like, come on, just go, because I'd felt so held back. And now I realize that um, I mean, in a way, it's part of the soul contract between you and them. And what you can do is go back and heal that if you feel like it wasn't aligned with your daughter's path. And so yeah, it's just still part of that wounding that we carry over, that's ancestral patterns that we were trying to heal in ourselves, and then we wanted something different for our daughter. But so when we look at the separation and we look at how our daughters um didn't, so our daughters need to push against us to be able to go out into the world. In a way, the stronger the push against us is, the better it is for them, because to be able to take that leap and drag your half body out of the village to find the other half of yourself in the holy hills, it takes a lot. So it's kind of like, the more fierce they are about it, the better it is for them, because that force of I'm going to go is like what's needed to be able to let go and to go out of the village. So I have women say their daughters like hate them and stuff like that, and it's kind of like the way that it's what they need to do to be able to go. And sometimes they have to destroy everything to be able to go. 2 seconds, just got to deal with my dog. Sorry, I was thinking wanted to go out. Yeah, so that journey of understanding that the separation and how it's held isn't going to be perfect in our culture. we have to try to do is allow them, which is what's happening under the water in the river, to form their adult wings. So that river, that journey of the subconscious, is their adult wings forming. And for the adult wings to form, they have to take that deep dive, because they don't know how it's going to look, you know, their adult wings, and how they're going to form. So we can always go back and heal all of that by realizing that it was a spiritual journey in the first place, which is what we didn't understand. So let's just look at that journey of finding your wholeness. You know, so before the two half girls had fused together and she spat out onto the riverbank as a whole girl, you know, that journey of the subconscious there, that dark night of the soul and the psyche, like I said, I mean, what happened for me with one of my daughters then was my beloved drowned. Just as she was reaching that stage, she was 14, my older daughter. My other daughter was 11, and we all saw that. We were there. And so what I had going on was that when my older daughter did, I saw that she was fighting with herself, and then she fell into her subconscious, into the teenage years, that I needed to have not, you know, to let her go. I was traumatized, so were my girls, and I was sort of like on the riverbank, and every now and again our daughters, they come up for air, they come out of the subconscious, they're like like that before they go back under, and I was kind of like there sort of on the riverbank, like, because I was so anxious about it, even though I trusted her. We'd had this epic thing happen that meant that our lives were changed forever, and I didn't know how that was going to be for her. So I was kind of on the riverbank, and I shouldn't have been there. But I knew that in a way I was being conscious in that unconscious act of being on the riverbank. I wasn't doing helicopter parenting. Every time she came up for air, I would say, I trust you. And she'd go back under. And at one point, she was suicidal because of what was happening. And even she told me that one of her fights under the water was that she wanted to die, right? She wanted to kill herself. And even when she came out of the water and expressed that pain, I had to say, I trust you. I trust you, because I knew that what I needed to do was hold space for her journey under the water, whatever was happening, however terrifying it was for me, you know, that I trusted her and that she would find her way to wholeness, and that the journey she was on was to find her wholeness, and she couldn't not find her wholeness, because that is what's destined for all of us. So when we start working with the subconscious, we start to understand that that's the difference between fate and destiny. Fate is what's fated to play out because of your trauma and because of your past conditioning and because of your ancestral wounds. But destiny is what comes when you get out of the way of yourself. So prayer, ceremony, forgiveness, compassion, and calling yourself home, calling your daughters home, and, you know, doing what I call soul mending, which is my way of doing it, which is with the inner wise woman, the heart temple, and all of that. And, you know, recognizing that these are stepping stones to healing culture. So you forgive yourself for the bits that you didn't do quite right, but you can go back to that inner river inside of yourself. You can go back and do that journey again. Absolutely, you can. That's what shamanic work is. That's what spiritual work is. Going back, but making that intention and that focus, and having the woman that you are now hold it for your inner girl to go on that journey. The third threshold of when they leave home, Karen. The third threshold of when they leave home post teenage years is what I was touching on in my message to you last week. Okay. Yeah, when they leave home post teenage years. Yeah. The third when they leave home. So the third threshold, yes, so that's first blood. So you've got, so in my reality, you've got birth, girl bloom, first blood, first flight. Yeah. But the fourth threshold is when you left home um after the teenage years. Yeah. So this is the half girl story. So first flight is when she's spat out onto the riverbank in her wholeness. So she's done the deep dive of the teenage years. She spat out onto the riverbank. And what does she do? She tries to stand on her own 2 feet and she falls down. She tries to stand on her own 2 feet and she falls down again until eventually she stands on her own 2 feet. And then she realizes that there's nothing left to do but to go back to her village. So that's the first flight threshold after the teenage years, is when she starts to begin to try to stand on her own 2 feet. Yeah. She's done the deep dive and you can see it. It's when the adult brain starts to set. Yeah. When the adult brain starts to set, you're out of the cocoon, you're out of the dark night, the soul, and everything changes. You found your wholeness. So for those of us who never found our wholeness, that's the journey of the holiness of who we truly are. So when we're reclaiming our so what I would say, if you've got any girls or you've got girls of any friends that you know that are experiencing a really strong self-initiation and you can see that they're struggling, is that the mother needs to get out the way and trust her daughter no matter what's happening, and to allow her to go on that journey to her own wholeness. And all of our youth will be self-initiating because that's what we did. And to, what you can do as a mother is you can make ceremony whenever she comes up for air, for the healing of your own inner girl and for the healing of them, and to heal those ancestral wounds. Even if you, excuse me, your daughter doesn't want to do it with you, that you make that ceremony. Because when we're talking about that journey of the subconscious before first flight, Karen, is everything can be changed in the subconscious. Everything can be brought to wholeness, which is our holiness. And what we can do is realize that if we didn't have a mother to call us home, when I talked about the mother's voice calling us home, that is the Holy Mother, right? That is the divine feminine of our heart. So we're holding our inner girls as they go on that journey now. Our inner girl has to go on that journey. And that's what needs to happen for her to come to wholeness. Yeah. She has to go on that journey. And that's how we recover our holiness. And so when we realized that the first flight threshold was when we got out onto that riverbank, and then she chooses to go back to the village. There's nowhere left for her to go but to go back to that village. We realized that she is making her way home and she's almost calling herself home. But what the village is doing there is that they're singing and dancing for her as she journeys home. They're singing and dancing for her. And that is all of them calling her home. They are singing her, and they've been dancing for the whole time. So when you go back to the half girl, you realize that in the half girl, they thought she thought the village wasn't listening. When you get to the wholeness, so at age 8.5 to about 12, you think that nobody's listening, nobody understands you, and that you're on your own. First blood comes and you choose to leave because you have to, you've got no choice, meaning you go on your inner journey. Then you get to the wholeness at first flight, the fourth threshold, Karen, yeah. Then you begin to realize that they were there for you. Your parents were there for you. For those of you who didn't have parents there for you, that's a different story. But if you haven't had a massive amount of trauma, that you know, they were there for you. For those of us who realize that we've been brought up in a culture that doesn't have a healthy village, there's nowhere to go back to. So if you think inside of yourself at the first flight threshold, you've just found your woman, your wholeness, who you truly are, your holiness as a soul. You've got to the place. First flight is when you're ready to give of yourself to life. Yeah, you begin to want to give of yourself to life, the reason why you came in the first place, because that's what you found under the water in that journey of the teenage years, is that your own reasons for being here in a healthy culture is that you go back to a culture and they need to witness and honor you. They do what the elder does, and they say, oh my God, we've been waiting for you all of this time. We come on, come back with us. We've been waiting for you. We want to welcome you home. And she goes back with the elder, and she realizes that they've been singing and dancing for her the whole time, singing and dancing her home, calling her home, and she's welcomed into a healthy culture. And that means that she is witnessed and honored in who she's becoming. So that's what rites of passage is when the next phase of your life, it has arrived and you have a witnessing and honoring that anchors in who you truly are, so you can step across that threshold. So that's why in the story she has to return home. So for those of us who returned home and we didn't have that witnessing and the honoring, some of us didn't even go home, that, you know, that's why we haven't fully stepped into our own womanhood, because we never had that moment. And so most of us who've been on a healing path or a spiritual path found that to some extent through our spiritual teachers, through our healing practices. But yeah, what I'm talking about is working with the subconscious and making ceremony for your inner girl. So, you know, one of the ways is I have a bundle. You know, I work with my bundle, which is my altar to myself, and I'm blowing parts of myself home all of the time. And it's an act of devotion to who I truly am. It's an act of devotion to bringing all that fragmentation home and to go into my heart temple and to give myself, my inner girl, my inner teenager, that journey consciously. And that's how I catch up on my own rites of passage. So even if you're an elder and you want to go back and you want to undo those mistakes, you can. It's all completely reprogrammable. And the dramatic effect it has on your family and the culture is profound. It has a huge effect not only on your family and your children, but on culture. And so yeah, when we're like Jane with your questions, when we see another mother and daughter struggling, or it might be our own, we have to let go. We have to understand that journey, we shouldn't be on the riverbank. If we are on the riverbank doing a bit, we have to make sure we're not doing helicopter parenting when our daughters need to leave. We need to make sure that we are observing them, watching them, and honoring them, no matter what they're expressing, with complete trust in them and the awareness that we are um, empowered, right? We're empowered. We're not in anxiety. We're not in fear. We're not projecting our own teenage years onto them. And we're not projecting our ancestral issues onto them. We're being truly empowered in what we're sharing in those moments, which ideally should be some kind of mother-daughter ceremony between you, of forgiveness and honoring and love and care, of, you know, letting go of each other and reimagining each other's relationship. So yeah, when you get to wholeness, Karen, I'm just reading your message. I feel we have the opportunity to grow new wings as mothers each time our daughters cross the threshold, if we can allow the process to unfold. Absolutely, we can. So our daughter's rites of passage is our rites of passage, which goes back to Louise's question, and Jane's in a way, and Juliet's in a way, because we can allow ourselves to die each time one of our daughters goes through a death process and finds her adult wings, crosses actually any of those thresholds, girl bloom, first blood, first flight, because we can let ourselves die with ceremony and step into even more of our life and our freedom and our love, and reimagine ourselves as a mother and a woman, and to expand even more into the new version of ourselves, which then heals our maiden years, it heals our mothering years, so we can step fully into elder. So this is why I call my programs Healing the Maiden, Restoring Elderhood. And actually, even when I'm running conscious death retreats, we realize that we can't even die properly if we haven't let ourselves die before, right? And I'll talk to death in the next video, because yeah, we realize that it's all, the map of womanhood isn't an isolated, oh, that's just my daughter doing that, that's just an elder doing that over there. Our journeys are together as a journey of evolution. That's why I call it mending the soul of the village. You can't have elders without youth, you can't have youth without elders, you can't have mothers without elders, you can't have birth without death. It's all an incredibly profound, miraculous creation from God. You know, this death and rebirth, death and resurrection, dying of ourselves, rebirthing of ourselves, and how we make it all conscious is through ceremony. So prayer, if we go back to what Juliet said, to go back and, what did she say? Pray back in time is exactly that. Go back and pray with your inner girl, pray with your inner teenager, pray with your mothering self, pray with your baby self, pray with your, if you're in spiritual elder, pray with your elder self, pray with your menopausal self if you've passed menopause, and embody that time of your life again in ceremony, and change it in your subconscious. That's stepping from fate into destiny, stepping out of trauma into higher states of consciousness, stepping out of child into woman, stepping out of contraction into expansion. And so making meaningful rites of passage is the way, right? And asking from the place that you are now, an empowered woman, asking your inner girl what she needed. You know, what did she need to get on, to make the journey from half girl? This is what I did, you know, 10 years ago when I started working with girls. That's what I had to do. I had to take, I'd already done it to some extent because I've had 25 years of shamanic training. So I had to find a way to take the women that I wanted to be in my village with me, with my daughters, with me on that journey of the inner river and the journey to wholeness, so we could sit with our daughters from a place of wholeness as much as possible. Obviously, it's an ongoing journey, but wholeness of those thresholds, yeah? Birth, birth, girl bloom, first flight, first blood, first flight, so that we could be there. So if we go back to Daniela's question, she's one of the women doing my trainings, is that, you know, when you're working with girls and you're making a ceremony, that you have that place where, well, my daughter's just come in, you have that place of understanding that what the girl needs, yeah? So when you're making a girl bloom ceremony, like I said, or a menage ceremony, you're aware of that process inside of yourself, separation, initiation or ordeal, or and integration. So that's why Karen, at first flight, traditionally it would have been a vision quest, because they would have known that the young person had gone through that process of the spiritual quest of the teenage years, and they were ready to sit on top of the sacred mountain and feel the vision of their lives. It's AJ, he needs to go out. Sorry, I'm just coming to my daughter. So that you have that vision quest at the top of the mountain to bring all of that quest of your spiritual teenage years into a vision for your life, and you come back down the mountain and you speak it to the elders so that you can be ready to give of yourself to life. And you've let die on the mountain what's not going to serve you, giving that vision to life, which is happening at first flight, whether we like it or not. All of these thresholds are happening to us whether we like it or not. And the vision quest makes conscious that unconscious ceremony. So, you know, when we look at men and boys, for Louise's question, it's the same journey really, but what the men tell me is that the ages are slightly different. So the ages of, say, looking at age 8.5 for girls is more like 11 for boys, and it comes with the testosterone and the first seed ejaculation. And so, you know, it's a say when you're talking about that story and you're talking about the journey that they go that we all go on as a soul, it's the same journey, right? And so I think what happens with men and boys is that they get more, there's a risk of them getting in the, you know, under the water in the river when they're fighting, the two half boys are fighting with each other. I think there's a risk that they could kill themselves under there, actually. And that's why we've got more suicide amongst young boys, because that fight under the water doesn't have the bleeding that we experience as women. That's happening under there. So they don't have a marker to show them that they're in ceremony. We have a marker with our blood to show us that we're in ceremony and we're dying. So that's the risk in there, is that could happen. So meaningful rites of passage for men and boys were, you know, vision quest, sun dance, sweat lodges, yeah, sweat lodges, and yeah, all walkabouts, you know. So recreating those things, you know. Yeah, I feel I get a lot of questions from mothers of sons asking me what they can do for their sons, and it's a tricky one because I feel the best thing that you can do for your sons is heal your trauma from your adolescent years around the masculine. Yeah, he doesn't have a healthy masculine. Yeah, totally. That's exactly what happens with a lot of women that I talk to, and it is frightening. And I think the best thing you can do is talk to your sons about rites of passage, talk to them about what they're experiencing being normal and how they are, you know, navigating it, and that when they feel the death of themselves, that it's not literal, that they are dying, but it's just part of them that's dying, which is their childhood, and that they are going to stay alive. Yeah, relationship with the masculine, same for most of us, love. Jane, it's not the best, but it's like healing the wounding that we experienced when we were building our sense of self, which is when we were dragging our half body towards the holy hills in the story, when we were under the water, which was our spiritual quest of the teenage years, and when we hit first flight. We need to heal all of our wounding around the masculine that we experienced then, to be able to really understand what our sons are going through, because otherwise we're just projecting our wounding, actually. And I say to women who ask me to be cautious about making ceremonies for boys, but if you haven't healed that, because we don't know what a healthy masculine is, actually, and let's be honest, we don't know what a healthy masculine is. And I would say that because I've got a nephew, and for those of you who know, I've got an identical twin sister, Hannah, we do this work together. I will say that what she's been learning, which is from healing her own wounds, is that the journey of the masculine is like, instead of it being a river, right, which we get as the divine feminine, it's the mountain. So at some point, they need to make the journey up their own inner mountain to the sun that's inside of their hearts, right? So at some point, the testosterone has to take them on a journey of climbing their own sacred mountain to get to their heart. And inside of their heart is the sun, which is their soul. And for those of you who know, my beloved son Hart drowned. He was working with men and boys, and I was working with women and girls. And his name was Sunha, his medicine name. And he was working with men and boys. And it is, to me, that's the journey of the masculines, finding their own inner sun and healing that journey of being a son, right? So, you know, what is holding the, you know, so for the feminine, the journey of the river is like the banks of the river is the sacred masculine and the holding of the sacred masculine. And the sacred masculine's journey up the mountain is like getting to the heart of the divine feminine. So that's how the masculine and the feminine work together. Has any, so Karen, your question, has anyone ever approached your work from the experience of having a daughter with learning difficult, younger learning age, which changes the possibility for independent living? Absolutely. Yeah, I haven't had that, if I'm honest, but I would say because they're a soul, I mean, this is the journey of the soul. So what I'm talking about in my programs is the journey of the body as sacred hormones. It's the sacred journey of the hormones working together with the spiritual quest of the soul. So it's a fantastic question, love, and I would actually love to explore that more inside of myself and with others. It's like, what's happening on a soul level for those young people? Let's not just keep it as girls. For those young people, what's happening on a soul level as their body changes and develops and they can't maybe have the physical process of rites of passage, of like actually leaving. On a soul level, they're still going through it. And on a bodily level, they must still be getting testosterone and they must still be getting estrogen. So I would say that in a way, the focus has to be even more on the journey of the soul. I mean, it is anyway, but to really allow what the meaning of why they have those learning delays or autism. What is the sacred journey that that unique soul is on? You know, because say without autism, without anything extra, just this journey that we go on, right? It's like, why did I experience that trauma? Why did I incarnate into a family that couldn't hold it for me, or betrayed me, or traumatized me? Why did I choose, you know, like for me, why did I have to witness my beloved drowning on the beach? You know, that is bringing consciousness to the awareness of my trauma, right? And bringing it to the light, bringing it to the holy, bringing it to my wholeness, right? Harnessing it and bringing it to a higher state of consciousness, which has been my path, right? So if you look at that from the journey of rites of passage, we have to go back and we have to go, how did my trauma initiate me? How does my past trauma initiate me into being a mother or into being an elder? And how can that best serve my family or my community or my culture or the world, right? It's the same journey for those with autism, those with younger learning age. They're still on a soul's journey of bringing meaning to their journey as a human and how it might serve humanity. So I'm imagining there's an incredible, profound truth, a profound spiritual truth that's trying to emerge with those young people with autism and younger learning that um, is the same. It's just in a different way. And what we have to do is bring witnessing and honouring of that to those young people. We need to make a ceremony for them and where they're at as they emerge into the wholeness of who they are, to really feel what is it that is a miracle that is here to serve life, right? Because there's no, I don't believe there's any mistakes, even in the mistakes, even in the imperfections, even in the destruction, there is the perfection, right? And I've experienced that myself and brought it to higher states of consciousness. Has anyone listened to the telepathy tapes? If you haven't, do. It's a bit off topic, but they are about non-speaking autistic people. They are a must to listen for anyone on Soul Journey. I will. Thank you for that. So bringing it back to Daniela's question around making ceremony now, you know, these are the things that the girls need. They need whoever's holding the ceremony for them, whether it's a group or whether it's an individual, for them to really see them, to witness them and honor them in whatever you design. There needs to be a time of separation, a time of initiation, of being in the liminal place in their own way, which can be seen as an ordeal or a bit of fear or something, an edge, and then an integration of a witnessing and honoring and an arrival and a receiving. Those are the key elements to that. So yeah, and I just feel really grateful. I'm going to just have a quick look to see, this is why I did my Voices of the Elders YouTube, because I wanted elders beyond me to speak to this. So it's a spiritual platform for younger generation to hear the elders speak. Yeah, I think, so one thing that I would suggest actually, which would address a lot of what you're all asking in terms of a ceremony, if you want something practical, is the placenta rebirthing ceremony. And I'm going to give it here. It is in my online training, but I'm going to give it here because it wasn't my ceremony in the first place that I came up with anyway. It's actually a book under the Kwandong tree called by Minamar, and I think, or Mima. It's such a long time ago I read it, but it's a placenta ceremony that she gives away, that she is an Aboriginal Indigenous woman. And the reason why I'm going to say, if you want anything practical from these lives that I've done in terms of ceremony, because I keep harping on about ceremony and prayer, this one, it's like what she's saying in her book is that everybody's placenta has to be buried, because our placenta has got a film on it called the Miwi print, which is our DNA, right? So in it contains the codes or the blueprint of who we truly are and why we've come to Earth. And when we bury the placenta, it gives Pachamama, Mother Earth, the embodied knowing that we've arrived, we've incarnated, and it anchors in our incarnation. It's like being plugged into this incarnation. And without having that happen, we're not truly here. And I really believe that the reason, this rites of passage, it's like really profound for why we're continually conceptualizing life and not truly in our lives and seeing life through the lens of what the Indigenous people see, which I call seeing the world through our soul eyes. It's like we haven't even arrived. So even just reclaiming birth, when you read her book and the profound nature of what the placenta is, and how to reclaim it, because we haven't truly arrived. It's like everything to the teenage years and beyond, because what she's saying is that if our placenta is buried, the earth, Pachamama knows we've arrived, our own unique blueprint. And then what she says is when they get to teenage years, that soul, that's a baby, arrives at the beginning of needing to go to the holy hills, like the story I told you. And there's loads of other stories and storytelling that I do with young people around this work that come from all over the world, not just the Half Girl story. There's a journey of the holy hills. When the young person goes to go on that journey, the first blood and the first semen, the first ejaculation, is put onto the land to activate the placenta, so that the placenta, the earth knows you've arrived, and then the first blood or the first seed activates that soul purpose. And it's kind of like, okay, now go. You're ready. Get on and give of yourself to life. The reason why you came in the first place, which is just to be yourself, right? So she talks about this rebirthing ceremony that you can do. And I've done it with women all over the world. I've done it in myself. So I had to wait. I was doing it with women already, but I couldn't do it for myself because I needed to wait until I was in the same physical place as my identical twin sister, Hannah, because we shared a placenta. Oh my God, loves, right? So what happened was me and Hannah waited till we were together to do the rebirthing ceremony. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, they're burnt together, Louise, right? So our placentas are all burnt in incinerators in the hospital. So what we do is we find a stone and we put our blood on it. And if we have stopped bleeding and we're doing this ceremony after menopause, we can still put some of our blood on it. We can put our hair on it. We pray with it. We anoint it. We make ceremony with the stone until we're ready to bury it, because it's become our placenta. Yeah. And we bury it with the ceremony that she talks about in the book. I mean, I've developed my own ceremony around it, relevant for the Western mindset, because we're not Aboriginal, which she is. So I've had to develop, I realized I needed to develop a ceremony to get out conceptualizing the ceremony in the first place. But anyway, I did this ceremony. Me and Hannah waited. And the only time we were together, and we'd waited maybe like a year, and we were doing it with other women, was when we were in Portugal. So we arrived in Portugal and we were doing a map of womanhood circle with some women out there who'd asked us to hold a camp for their daughters. So we prepared the women for the camp by training them in the map of womanhood. And we buried, so we got the stone, and as part of that ceremony, we buried our joint placenta stone in Portugal on the Algarve. And even me, who'd done 25 years of shamanic training, totally underestimated the power that ceremony was going to have. Because basically, we buried it, and then not long after, we started doing our shamanics. We founded our shamanic school and started training women together, and our website, the Sun Heart Temple School, it's now called. Our school, anyway, we did that. And then what happened was, about a year later, because we started going to the Algarve regularly and doing work there, and we were taking our children there. And then not long after, I think it was maybe 2 years after that, my beloved died in the Algarve. And then I was led through a series of miracles to buy the land that is now becoming the land of the Beloved Heart Sanctuary in Portugal. And I'm building the Sun Heart Temple. So me burying my placenta there, it was always destined to be there. Now I realize in hindsight that I was always destined to have land, to build a temple in Portugal, but I didn't know that because I wasn't being conscious enough, because we're not, because we're fragmented and we're conceptualizing our lives. Was that placenta set up a series of events that were totally my destiny, absolutely aligned, and tragic and profoundly beautiful and miraculous, and to the level of miracles that has led me to doing my work with the Sun Heart Temple and building my sanctuary and with Hannah. And it's like, yeah, I I don't know what it might have looked like if I'd had my placenta buried in the first place, but when I was a baby. But this reclamation of the placentas is a profound ceremony that I would recommend to you as a startup catch-up rites of ceremony. So yeah, if you want to get her book, Under the Kwandong Tree, I would recommend it. So yeah. So loves, thank you for all of your questions and messages and love and care for joining me. And I would ask if any of you felt that you got anything out of this question and answers and live event, to share it, and to subscribe on my YouTube channels, Voices of the Elders, or my Eartha Love one, or even I've got one, Sun Heart Love, for the temple in Portugal, and to share it so that the work can be shared out. And for the next one, I think I'm going to move on to talking about death. So next week at 2 o'clock, it's called Under the Kwandong Tree. Kwandong, Quadong. I will post it. I'll under this thread later. I will put it in the comments. If I get a chance. You shared it with your Rights for Girls sisters. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, love. So thank you so much for joining me. So yeah, just to share this if you want to, because you know, like I've said before, I'm at a place where I'm needing to move to Portugal and be in the temple, which is going to be a whole different body of work around Maha Samadhi, preparing for the death threshold and the afterlife. And so I'm really up for, you know, I've got my apprentices who are taking this out into the world. I've got women that are training me, taking this out in the world, but I don't want to hold it to myself. And just to, you know, begin to give it out. Because it's 10 years of me doing this work on the ground and learning from girls and learning from women, thousands of women's voices, thousands of girls' voices. So yeah, thank you for listening. Share it. Ask me more questions. Next week will be death, which is totally linked into everything I've said. And even if you join the death one, it's going to give you a whole nother perspective on how this works. So thank you so much. I'm going to go and be with my daughter and do the work. So yeah, thanks, love. Thank you, all of you. Yeah, have a blessed day. Thanks, loves.